Welcome to the Living Well podcast with Dr. Perrin. Dr. Perrin is a psychologist practicing from the state of Ohio. In this program, we discuss how to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. We are broadcasting live from X, YouTube, and Twitch at Dr. Perrin. That is DoctorPerin, Dr. Perrin. The show comes live from the participation of our audience. So if you have any questions, any burning questions, or anything related to the topic, please feel free to throw them right in the chat, and we'll address them as they come. We would definitely love to hear your thoughts and questions on the live chat on any of these platforms. I also want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by the Hopewell Institute. The Hopewell Institute is an educational media company dedicated to advancing mental health, personal development, and lifelong learning. They help fund educational content like this, making it easier for thoughtful conversation and transformative ideas to reach the people who need them. If you believe in the value of lifelong learning and want to support projects like this, visit www.thehopewellinstitute.com. The Hopewell Institute, education that moves people forward. Dr. Perrin, how are you?
I'm doing great. Everybody, this voice is my producer, Pablo Madrigal. Without him, this show would not happen. Welcome, Pablo, and thank you for that great introduction.
Well, I think it would happen, but it might be just half as good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just kidding. You're the start.
Yeah, I think you're the better half.
Right on. Okay, so here's a burning question. Why therapy? Why therapy and not something else? Why therapy and not just going to the gym and sweat it all out, if you will?
Well, I want to say I actually think the gym is a terrific way to get out a lot of tension. One of the phrases or one of the terms that I'm really into is a catharsis, actually expressing or getting out an emotion. And gosh, there are very few things as effective as the gym as getting out anger, frustration, sometimes fear, anxiety. So, I think the gym is a terrific way to get that catharsis. It's actually one of the best ways to get that catharsis, especially if you go multiple times a week. I'm a bit of a gym nerd myself. It doesn't always lead to the transformational change, especially when we're talking about psychology or in behavioral change. Not for nothing. A lot of people who are going through hard times and they go to the gym, it creates kind of a very strong self-reflective component, and you are doing something difficult. There are lots of advantages to it, but it isn't therapy. What I think is important about therapy, or as opposed to anything else, is that the focus is about change. I said this earlier on social media, but if you just replace the word therapy with the word change, you're going to really understand what it is. People come for change. They meet with a changeist, and a lot of the change happens in between the change sessions every week. So why therapy? So that people can change. Tons of people know that they need to eat well, exercise right, sleep well, play, socialize, not do drugs, right? I think it's a fallacy to believe that if people knew better, they would do better. All the best advice in the world isn't going to account for free will. Therapy addresses that. It's not so simple as just getting advice. If you wanted advice, read a self-help book, hire a coach. This is more about introspection and change.
Mm-hmm. So I would think, just to stay on the topic of the gym, some people would argue that introspection can happen at the gym while you are, getting physical exertion, and maybe you're pushing your body to the limit, and that help you, tap into your mind as well. And maybe while you're focused on running, then that would be a time for self-reflection and introspection, and that it's enough for you to address that. What is something that therapy can offer, and what you can get out of therapy that you can get out of just a good, inside look at the gym or running outside?
Oh, of course. But well, my bias is more towards psychodynamics. Now, I know that's a $20 word, but to define it, it is that there are psychological processes that are outside of our awareness. Now, one of the great things, like having a routine, especially getting into an exercise program, whether you're a runner or whether you're a lifter, like it can make you a better person. It can make you more disciplined. It can make you more introspective. But it doesn't always bring things to your awareness that are outside of your awareness, especially when it comes to interpersonal or interrelational issues. So in the gym, maybe you're angry, or maybe you're depressed. You lift, you can get the endorphin rush, or you can get that testosterone boost. You do it long enough, maybe your posture is going to get better. You're going to have a broader chest and a stronger back. So there are tons of advantages that come to it, but it does not necessarily bring your attention to things that are outside of your awareness. What Freud would call making the unconscious conscious. Those can sometimes be done by hearing information or hearing the right thing, maybe watching a podcast or reading a book, and the right information hit you at the right time. But very often those moments actually happen in relationship. There is an interpersonal component to that, where people bring your attention to what might be just outside of your awareness. The gym can it can get you in touch with a lot of things, but I say this very affectionately. Everyone I know who goes to the gym regularly, they can point out some people at the gym who they want to gently suggest try therapy, or or wish they could gently suggest they try therapy. It ain't a cure-all.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, of course, they're not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, they could and should live in harmony, and ideally you would go to the gym and therapy, right?
I ideally that's what I do, but I think that one of the trickiest things is that if people were capable of taking the sound advice, the obvious advice, eat well, sleep well, exercise well, play well, if they were capable of taking that advice and it working for them, they wouldn't be coming to therapy. By the time they come into my office, they've tried the gym, they've heard, to eat cleaner. Like this isn't new information. They're not looking for advice. They're looking for, why can't I take advice? Why can't I do what I know I need to do? That is essentially what's outside of our awareness.
So in your experience, why do some people hesitate to try even to try therapy even when they're struggling? Like, why would they choose to pursue other avenues before going to therapy?
Well, I actually think people should pursue other things before going to therapy. Try what, go to a wizened elder or somebody whose advice you respect. But if it doesn't work, keep going back to the drawing board, keep going back to the drawing board. Sorry, I had a brain fart. Can you repeat the actual question you were asking me?
Yeah, why do people hesitate to try therapy even when they're struggling?
Right. I work with a lot of dudes. And I would actually say a lion's share of my caseload are men. That's atypical. That's very uncommon for therapists. Most caseloads are heavily weighted towards women. A lot of them are also heavily weighted towards very specific age groups that are very pro therapy. I play therapy on hard mode. So I go for people who are about 20 or 30 years older than me, and they are very masculine, and some of them have avoided therapy for 50 years. One, it's not very masculine. A lot of men are in the United States, especially in Mexico. We've talked about machismo before.
Oh yeah.
There is a lot of cultural pressures to essentially be stoic, to overcome, to not get for help, things of that nature.
Yeah, showing vulnerability is frowned upon, or is it just only doesn't look good on you. It's not what you're supposed to do.
Well, unless you can find the benefit. If someone could say, here is the utility, here is the specific pragmatic use in the tool of why you should feel this emotion right now, or why you should, talk to a person, and et cetera, et cetera. And very often therapists struggle to articulate that, especially early career clinicians, especially to men. Like, what is the absolute benefit? Okay, well, what are your goals? Well, this is how therapy can help you achieve that goal, or this is how therapy can help you get out of your own way so that you're not expending so much effort, so that you're not just working twice as hard to get a quarter of the impact. Long story short, I think the biggest reason is stigma. Another thing that men, I think especially young men in the 2000s, early 2010s, their initial experience with mental health is not voluntary. They're maybe hyperactive. They had maybe behavioral issues at school. Their parents dragged them to a therapist, but it was not them going, "Hey, this is something I want to work on. Let me find somebody that I can trust to work through it." It's normally they were dragged there against their will, and they played their game of "I'm not going to talk" or "I'm not here," et cetera, et cetera. And then they go on to become adults. They make their own money. They get into their own life, and they still have that "I don't want to," not them, they didn't help, they were, et cetera, et cetera. Not understanding that voluntary therapy, goal-driven therapy, works completely different than involuntary or being dragged to a therapy session. And I think once a lot of people get over that hump and they say, "I'm going to find the one I want. I'm going to find a guy that I trust. I'm going to find a guy that meets my criteria and work on the goals I want to work on," they are extremely successful in therapy. The sky is the limit to what they can accomplish.
Mhm. And what do you see for other therapy substitutions that people look for? I don't know if substitution is the right word, but like just like the gym, that they oh no, I'm gonna go to the
Substitution's
gym.
a great word.
Is that a
Oh
good
gosh,
word? Yes.
dogs, especially
Uh,
emotional support
sure.
animals. This is one of the trickiest things ever, because there are people, they'll go to therapy and they will get an emotional support animal, or they'll or sometimes they'll get the full-on service animal, like the actual like medically trained service animal for PTSD, or medically trained service animal for social anxiety disorder. And that's the last day they show up for therapy. They're like, "I got my prescription, I got my dog. Why should I come back to therapy?" And we want to shake them. We want to say, "So you don't need the dog anymore. The reason that we want you to have this dog is so that you can put in and try new difficult things and overcome the issue that you're working on in therapy." And they say, "Well, why do that? I have my dog now." And then they stay in this, they stay stuck. They stay stuck in the same sort of maladaptive pattern for as long as they have the dog. There is no mechanism in place for them to say, "Well, you haven't been to therapy in 6 months, we're taking the dog back," because that would create a whole bunch of other problems. So yeah, no, I think there are tons of substitutions, not just animals, just avoidance in general. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there is no limit to the capacity of the human's ability to avoid, alter, or suppress their emotional life to their detriment, to the point where the echoes of their avoidance are causing further suffering. Um, Heck, drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol is a very popular substitute for therapy, because you
Oh
feel
yeah.
loved, you feel warm, and you feel great.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't argue that that's always the healthiest, behavior.
Yeah, probably not. I remember back when I was in college, I would go into my cathartic moments of locking myself in my room with my video games and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I was like, "No, I'll be fine when I come out of there. I'm just gonna go check on myself for a little bit," and I could totally, not definitely not a good way of going about it, but after surfacing from that room after a weekend, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to just let go or just
Well, that's
carry
that's
on, I guess.
cathartic. That's cathartic if you did it for a weekend, right? I had to get in touch with some things. I had to express some stuff. Maybe some whiskey was involved, and now I feel better. It's different if you're doing it every day or every weekend nonstop. That becomes, now I'm avoiding something.
Right,
I,
right.
the way I see it is that if you have all the stuff that you're wrestling with, and you can just push it out of your purview just for a little bit, so that you can do what you need to do, do your job, hug your wife, etc. Eventually that stuff's going to come back, and you got to deal with it. But if you keep pushing it away, nope, can't deal with that. Nope, got to keep drinking. Nope, got another bottle of whiskey. Nope, another weekend of binge video games. you're just you're not gonna work through it. You're not gonna actually process the emotions. You're gonna spend weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of your life essentially wasting your time, or delaying the completion of your goals.
Right,
But
right.
I want to say one more thing though, because when you're in college, there's a cultural component to drinking. It's really hard to be an alcoholic in college if you're drinking every day, but you're a member of a fraternity. That is culturally permissive. And there are tons of people where they can get drunk and they can meet all of their academic obligations. Unfortunately, they graduate college and they continue some of those habits, and it's harder to maintain a job as it is to, get a C or above in a university setting, and other problems can arrive. But there are tons of people, even those in fraternity or sorority lives, that once they graduate, they're not drinking 4 or 5 nights a week because they're not partying at their frat houses anymore. So I do think there is a little bit of a cushion for, hey, that's just the culture. If you're between 18 and 22 years old and you're in college and you're drinking a lot, but your peers are drinking a lot, we can completely different than if you're, 30 and holding down a job and drinking every night. I hope I made sense with what I'm trying to communicate here.
Yeah. So, I guess if I were to summarize it from my layman's understanding, there's no one solution. So, maybe having like a cathartic moment where you might need a little bit of whiskey to help you work through something over the weekend, it might not be the worst thing. But once it becomes a dependency, and it becomes a substitution for you talking to a therapist or to a real person, then that's when it becomes worrisome, right?
Oh yeah.
um
If you're drinking instead of going out to meet your future wife, or if you're playing video games instead of, applying for jobs, you're going to have other consequences. You're going to suffer in other ways than your psychological pain.
so how do you see therapy working alongside any of these other approaches like medication, exercise, mindfulness, all of that?
Mhm. Honestly, I genuinely think that they work really well together. In fact, there's a lot of research on people who take medication and do therapy together, being more effective than either one of them on their own, and that makes sense. If you're going through a very serious, emotional difficulty, and a medication that you're prescribed kind of takes the edge off for you to be able to connect with some of this really difficult emotional content in therapy, great. If we couldn't touch it until you were medicated, wonderful. Now we can touch it. It makes sense. Exercise as well, because a lot of the things that make us feel better. How am I going to phrase this? Um, if if we're not moving and we're not eating well, our body changes. We kind of know that. Sedentary lifestyle, we put on more fat, we lose a little bit more muscle. But we need to realize that the brain is part of the body. If there is atrophy in the body, if there's inflammation, arterial inflammation from diet, there's probably arterial inflammation in a lot of there's a lot of blood flow in the brain that is necessary. So if you are eating right and you're exercising, you are going to see a net positive in your mood, in your overall energy levels, and your vitality. It's not going to change history. It's not going to, undo a trauma. It's not going to like unkill a friend, or, change one's relationship with, danger, but it can do a lot. It can actually do a lot in terms of, improving your overall health. So yeah, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think the more you're able to stack within reason, um, the 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 better. I'm getting sounds on my earbuds. They might die on me. Uh, what was I saying? Oh, you said earlier about being kind of afraid of one solution. I would even say that with therapy, like, because there's no real one way in therapy. Any two people could present with completely different issues, but also they would respond to different interventions, different approaches with the therapist. So really, I think there's an important element of being able to go back to the drawing board, to genuinely think like what's working and what's not working, and to always be able to reevaluate that. If it's the gym, it's the gym. If it's eating more meat and less carbs, it's eating more meat and less carbs, fewer carbs. Um, I hope I'm making sense, but no, I don't think that
Yeah.
these things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Earlier you said that, therapy shouldn't be the first solution. Something along those lines. And I'm paraphrasing you, but you said something like that. Like therapy could be like the second or third um, solution or approach to whatever.
Mhm.
So when are those self-help tools are enough, and when is it important to seek professional support and to seek
That
therapy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I had a really concrete answer for that. In my experience, by the time they come to my consultation room, they've already tried everything. They've already tried self-help books, advice. They've maybe hired a coach or two. They've read dozens, if not countless, countless of self-help books, and it's not moving them forward. It's one of my mentors. He refers to this as the informed ill. It's like the person who cracks open a beer and goes, "Oh, so that's why I'm an alcoholic. It's because my dad drank, or because he beat me and he never loved me," as they're reaching for and drinking again. It's the limit to the insight oriented approach. Like you can know or you can understand, but it hasn't really created that mechanism to change or to live differently. Uh, I think that's usually when it's time to go to therapy. When you said I've tried or I know what to do, I'm just not doing it.
And so once we make it there to therapy, can therapy address issues that lifestyle changes alone can't? Can you hear me?
So, sorry, my battery died. You're now coming in through this speaker, and I don't know if we're getting sound. Uh,
I can hear
what's the
you.
word I'm
Can
looking
you hear
for?
me?
Oh, I'm sure you can hear me. I'm hoping that they don't hear it, that our audience doesn't hear you twice. We're probably not going to get this for a minute because there's a little bit of a delay. But if you're hearing two things, please message me and I'll get a different headset. If everything's fine, um, I guess we're just
And
going to keep
then
talking.
everything's fine.
Yeah. But sorry, what were you asking?
Yeah, no. Can can therapy address issues that lifestyle changes alone can't?
Yes. I would very enthusiastically and emphatically say yes, therapy can change things that things like exercise alone can't. One of the mechanisms that therapy has that a lot of people are wrestling with in the sort of the AI discourse is the actual role of the therapeutic relationship. Like there's kind of a natural tennis match with dialogue when people are talking. You say something, I say something, you ask a question, I answer, I ask a question, you answer. Like there is a big relational element here. And people could argue that, AI has that, but it's not the same. You're talking to a toaster essentially. Um, the way I explain this is really early on in AI. One of the first things that somebody did is they turned it into like a text message program, but you were supposed to text your wins. You're just supposed to say, hey, I went home with the prom queen last night, and it's gonna go, hey, way to go, that's awesome, but it's something just to brag about. And the first time it did, the first time I tested it because I was curious, it did give me it's like rah rah, you did it, and I felt kind of, hey, all right, I did do it. And then I sent it a second time, and it said rah rah, you did it. I was like, yeah, okay, I guess that's what you're programmed for. The third time I got nothing. There was the emotional reaction to its response was gone. I could tell it was a toaster. The toaster was talking to me. If the toaster said, hey, you did a good job toasting this bread, I'm not going to go, oh, thanks. I really appreciate it. And the reason for that is because there's not a real interpersonal reaction there. Now I don't think that it can't happen because we're seeing cases where people are developing almost delusional or psychotic responses to their AI. They're developing friendships. They're marrying. I think there are people who are calling their AI partners their husbands.
Oh my
It's
god. Yes, I saw that the other day. That was crazy. I don't know, man.
So people are developing an emotional connection to their AI. So I feel like there has to be something to it.
Yeah.
But I have never experienced it, and a lot of the people that I know who are maybe over 30 haven't really experienced it. And I think it's because of that therapeutic relationship. Like, you can tell that you're connecting with a real human. When that happens, you're going to act differently than when you're talking to a toaster.
So
You're going to share things differently.
a friend of someone close to me um, was consulting ChatGPT on marriage advice, and he was inputting his issue in detail to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT helped me figure this out and came to my friend with just wow, ChatGPT has all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is how I've been consulting Chat on my marriage problems and blah 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 blah. And my friend goes, really? Is that really like effective? And the guy goes, I'm telling you, this is the future.
Best
And
advice
but
I ever read.
and my question is, well, you are a therapist. You can recognize, and you recognize the importance of that interpersonal connection and talking to people and talking to someone. There's people that are not like that. There's people that prefer not to talk to people, to someone else if
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I think maybe the danger is that the results, the interaction with GPT is just, in that uncanny valley, right? Is just close enough or similar or real enough that it might just be enough for them or all they need.
The tricky component is in the advice giving, because this is a common misconception of therapy as well, that you go to a therapist for advice. I mean, I call it my consultation room. You consult with me. Ideally, I'm giving you some guidance. I'm giving you some advice. And I'm not a monster. I maybe if you haven't heard some advice before, I can pull some things out of my pocket to give you excuse. But advice is a dime a dozen. Google it. What are some things to make my wife happy? Google will give you 100 pieces of advice. That's fine. When are you going to actually go and talk to your wife about these things? Or what's it like knowing exactly what to do and you still having marital problems? All of the advice in the world cannot cure a person of their free will or of the very deeply ingrained patterns that have been following them since childhood. Some traumatic, some otherwise, the things that we love, the things that we like. The thing about AI, or at least where AI is currently, is it's programmed to keep you engaged with it. Well, this was a big problem with, I think, ChatGPT 3, 3.0. 3.0 was programmed specifically to keep getting you to talk to it. So it was very enthusiastic. Yeah, no, keep talking. Yeah, keep telling me about it. 4.0, it was known for being very reassuring. So people would say, "Oh yeah, I punched my wife in the face because she wasn't respecting me." And 4.0 would be like, "You were right to do so. She should not have spoken to you that way. You're completely valid in your decision to punch your wife in the face." Like, there is a missing element there that I think is very irresponsible, for one. But two, that's not what a therapist would do. Well, one, a therapist wouldn't validate someone's decision to punch their partner in the face, but they wouldn't give advice. "Oh, you really shouldn't do that. Punching in the face is bad." Yeah, no crap. They want to connect with that. What was it like? How do you actually feel knowing that you hurt the person that you love? Maybe they haven't thought about that, or any other reason. We would rope it into actually their goal. But the ChatGPT isn't about, let's introspect a little bit more, let's explore that. Maybe if you know more parts of yourself, you're gonna make more informed decisions instead of essentially knee-jerk reactions to every time your wife talks to you. It's just going to validate you or give you advice. Next time, offer her food. Advice, I don't know.
To
They're
be
like
fair,
buttholes.
that is always the best advice, and that is always probably the solution. Just saying.
Yep. Feed them
So
first. If they're still mad, yeah.
then we'll talk. So okay, but I wonder how much the majority of people are able to kind of discern the difference between Google advice versus, you know, actual you know, therapy, like, you know, talking
Mhm.
through to get to progress, right?
Yeah.
I'm stumbling my
Beyond
word here.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah, beyond advice, right? Especially when it comes from something like AI, which is supposed to be have all the answers of the universe, right? And my question is, do you think that people would rather consider that AI advice enough, and instead of having to go through the hurdle to find the right therapist, you think a lot of times is maybe just ChatGPT is so easily accessible.
Mhm.
Open up your browser, boop, 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 and you're good to go, right? And
Mhm.
how much really does it take to get a therapist? And also, how does one even find the right therapist to fit your needs? And that's the thing, is like, well, you're gonna you know, roll the dice on somebody that maybe your insurance portal is referring or whatever.
Mhm.
You don't
Yeah,
know.
that they wouldn't be a good fit. But well, first of all, you could punch into ChatGPT, how do I find a good therapist? How do I find one who would be a good fit for me? Break it down into the simplest steps. Give me interview
Right,
questions to find the right fit for
right.
myself. Um, I want to think about this for a second. Uh, let's say your problem is that you are a smoker and you're saying I'm at 2 packs a day and I want to get to 0 packs a day. What advice would you give that person? Don't smoke. How about next time you want a cigarette, don't. Great
Actually, I would
advice.
say
It's correct.
smoke lighter cigarettes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that could be correct advice, right? Go to lights, reduce them maybe over 12 weeks, smoke a brand that you don't find as good so that you're more likely to and maybe over 12 weeks you'll quit. Or just quit cold turkey, just don't smoke again. I have now given everybody the correct advice. Smokers, every smoker who has heard that, you now know how to quit smoking. The next time you have a craving, don't. Done. Cured, right? Everyone? No one's ever going to smoke again?
Yeah.
There are limitations to advice. ChatGPT can give you all of the advice in the world. I'm going to pose another question. So I work with a lot of people with anxiety. I have a fair amount of it myself. And sometimes when I'm nervous, what I like to do is I like to break something down into smaller steps, or I'll create a to-do list. I know I'll organize all the things that I'm worried about. And then I'll look back at my beautiful to-do list and I'll feel really good and I'll get a sense of accomplishment and my anxiety will be gone. I'm not doing anything on that to-do list. I have resolved the tension. I have relaxed the anxiety, and therefore I don't get anything done. ChatGPT does that for me all the time. I have these great ideas and I'll read their output and it'll tickle my brain. I'll be like, oh, that's so cool. I could do something with this. Maybe I'll turn this into a project, or, oh man, I can give me a business strategy. Bam, 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 bam. Oh, this is a beautiful business strategy. This is the greatest business strategy ever. And then I close it and I go to sleep. Very often what I think people are getting is they're getting the satisfaction without the transformation. They get the relief, they get the catharsis. They don't get the abreaction. They don't get the actual change, the transformation, the tension, the wrestling with. Very often when you confront something that you don't want to confront, something that's dark, something that's painful, we're animals. We come from the kingdom Animalia, and doesn't matter how many religious documents you might read, humans are capable of killing. Most people say, not me, I could never do it, until they're tested. Maybe, you know, someone threatens them or they threaten their loved ones and they go, oh my gosh, I'm capable of, you know, I could lift a car off of my child. Like what, you know, what could I do? Sometimes that's a scary thought for people. And they go home and they have to wrestle with that. They have to wrestle with that for a long period of time. If you're not confronting the darker parts of yourself, you're not gonna have the friction. You're not gonna have the tension. You're not gonna have the open tension in which to do something differently. You're gonna continue going through life like a reflex, like that, you know, that little rubber mallet that doctors put on your knee to test if you flick at it. I feel like I'm losing my point here, but I think that to me there's just this one extra level that people aren't really addressing. They think that advice will do it, or just reading or watching the right podcast, like the Living Well show. I like these kinds of formats because, you know, I could give advice or we can talk about those things, but therapy's a little different. Therapy isn't, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? It's, why do you think that hasn't worked? Or what is that like? It's really more about introspection and confronting our limitations, confronting what we can't control, confronting where we're powerless, where maybe we've been abandoned or rejected, where we're afraid, where we're angry. ChatGPT isn't gonna address some of those things, or at least not yet.
Yeah, you know, that this sounds to me like it's a direct symptom or result of just this technological world that we live in, that it revolves entirely on immediate gratification. It's what happens with, so it's what social media does to us, right? Is that just flashes of endorphins, and these flashes of that was very satisfying, you know, oh my god, I just fought with this person online, I feel better. There's no depth to it. It's all just face value.
Well, I mean, it sometimes, and I was going to say something, but brain fart, entirely lost my train of thought here. Nope, sorry, completely gone.
Well, except for perhaps X and therapy Twitter.
That's for those of you joining us on YouTube, you guys are all right.
Yeah.
Well, I genuinely do think that some people go to social media for that catharsis. If you're angry, if you're bitter, it's a great place for you to be anonymous and get out some of that tension. Oh, I showed him, or oh, I don't feel so angry anymore. But in terms of like patience, I can remember when I stopped having patience for websites loading in, and it was like 3 or 4 seconds. If a website did not load in 3 seconds, I was hitting that refresh button. And I remember going like, huh, that's weird. I remember having dial-up and it took a lot longer and I had the patience for it. I wonder what's changed. How I'm seeing this showing up on social media is people are responding with, so on X it's Grok. So if you respond at Grok and ask it a question, even if you're commenting on someone's post, it's going to read that post and it's going to comment to that post. What I think is really funny is people are now using Grok as like the reality testing. And you're seeing people who are like experts in their field. They'll say 2 + 2 is 4. And someone will respond, Grok, is this true? And Grok's going to do what AI or what LLMs do. It's going to come up with this big grandiose thing of, well, according to the theory of addition, yes, and blah, 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 blah. But the thing is that it pulls from Reddit. It pulls from Google. It pulls from like Wikipedia. And so if I were to say Melanie Klein was, you know, one of the greatest of the object relations theorists, and someone says, Grok, is this true? And says, no, Melanie Klein was, you know, actually an acrobat from Serbia. I'm going to tell them like, no, you're that ChatGPT is wrong. They would tell me, no, you're wrong because ChatGPT.
How dare you?
And I find that unnerving. At least when I was in school, I think Wikipedia was taking off when I was in school, and people were going like, "You like Wikipedia is not a credible source. It's not a primary source. It's a secondary source. So investigate the Wikipedia sources and find the citations." And this critical thinking skill was like beaten into us as early as Wikipedia existed. I don't hear people talking about that with Grok or ChatGPT. It makes stuff up. It hallucinates data.
So to reel it back in a little bit, we've talked about therapy substitutions in the shape of gym AI consultations or AI advice, bottles of Jack Daniels.
There's a time and place for it.
Yeah. How can we normalize therapy so it seems as normal or as easy as going to the gym, as asking AI? What do you think about that?
Oh man, I think it would be great. And I think one of the things that we need to start with is changing managed care. It's the third party payer system. We are not going directly to the people we want to work with. If something busts in your house, what do? You maybe get a plumber, you maybe get a handyman. They show up, they quote you, you get out your checkbook, you write a check to that handyman and you give it to them. What do you do when you want a therapist? You call your insurance network. ABC Insurance, what therapists do you have on your network? ABC Insurance is going to give you a list of who they have available. Maybe ABC Insurance has some secondary gain. They're trying to, pad the prices of their, they want their board to be happy. The people who want to maximize profits. So they think, okay, here's a social worker who's a therapist. We pay them $40 an hour. Here's a counselor as a therapist. We charge him, we pay him $60 an hour. And here's a psychologist. We pay him $80 an hour. Let's not show the psychologist on our network. Let's show them which social workers are available. So we have to spend the least amount of money. There are a lot of tricks. These tricks end up pushing people off of insurance networks. So people who want therapy think that they have to go through these third-party payers, or they think that they need to go through these managed care settings. They go to a hospital and they get therapists assigned to them. They are not thinking, gee, I have this problem and I know so-and-so in my community deals with that problem. I'm going to go to so-and-so. I think one of the first steps is really bringing back independent practice for therapists. Let insurance companies pay a therapist. Don't let a therapist be on an insurance network. Also have insurance pay therapists more. But I think independent practice is going to do it. Once there are therapists in your community and you have options and you get to choose who you want to work with, I think a lot of that stigma is going to go away. As I said earlier, a lot of people's first introduction with therapy is not voluntary. It's either through managed care, or maybe they're hospitalized, or they're dragged to a therapist against their will by a parent. One of the things that we're seeing right now is a pretty big gender differential in the field. Men make approximately 24% of the practicing therapists right now, a little bit less than 1 out of every 4. Some people want to work with men and they don't really have a lot of options for it. So they go through their insurance network and it's entirely females, or they go into a hospital network and the only people working in that clinic are women, and they say, I want to work with a man. The clinic says we can't do that. That person can sometimes walk away and they don't get therapy. I've been hired at 2 hospitals because veterans wrote their senators that there were no male therapists in their clinics, and they had to move mountains to get men in the clinics. And one of the reasons why is that we are more likely to be the primary breadwinners in our family, and insurance isn't paying us. And they're actually actively putting as much effort as they can to not pay us or pay us less. One of the worst tricks that I'm seeing, the sneakiest practice I saw, they did it to one of my colleagues. She negotiated a rate with them for X amount of dollars per hour. They mailed her a physical check for below that rate. and she was desperate because she had bills to pay. So she cashed it because she needed to pay the bills. And they said cashing that check was consent for the price. So even though it was less than their actual contracted agreed rate, because she used that for emergency bills, the insurance said, we're not going to pay our negotiated rate. You accepted the cash check. It's very likely that that was by design. That was part of their practice to underpay therapists. And
Well,
people wonder, why is it hard to find a therapist on my network?
Mm-hmm. So I guess the bottom line is that in order to normalize it, and it just has to be much more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Make it as normal as getting a physical.
As normal, yeah, as normal as going to the urgent care when you have a strep throat or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, if someone's had a really bad day, and sometimes everything adds up at once, when it rains, it pours, that's a great time to go in for a checkup or a tune-up. Maybe maybe that is the entry into an episode of care, or a course of therapy. Maybe they just need, a little bit of support, a little bit of feedback. Maybe they just need a little bit of advice, and somebody telling them, hey, try this, or why don't you try 2 of these and call me in the morning. And that's all they need to get through their issue. But yeah, I think that part of that normalization process is to just make it available for tune-ups or more.
Do you think therapy is still to some degree stigmatized in society, in culture?
Less so for our generation. Gen Z is very open to psychotherapy. Gen X is pretty comfortable with it. I think it's about 50-50. Half of them are fairly like ambivalent, but some of them are saying no, screw it. I'll give it a shot. They're pretty much self-sufficient. So if they want to try something, they will. I do think that there is, I'm seeing waves of stigma kind of coming out. Right now there's the big movement for, physical health, and I'm for it. I'm a huge champion. Every once in a while, people will compare it to therapy as if it's a zero-sum game. You're either going to the gym or you're going to therapy. And I have a problem with that. I say, no, you get physically healthy. It doesn't change history, but it can change a lot. I think that this movement for health is also leading to kind of the secondary wave of stigma that you don't need therapy. You need to just, do cool stuff, get a job, toughen up, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that you can really focus on health and self-improvement and get a therapist.
Oh my God, I have a question. Oh yeah. So you know what we need? What we need is the Ashland Hall of Therapy. Okay. We need the guy, the Saratoga guy.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. I think he got like 1 billion views. It was something ridiculous. Like 1 out of 7 people on Earth saw his morning routine.
Yeah. Listen, you hear it here first. We're gonna be the first therapy influencers. Okay.
I would love to see that. It's going to be someone really healthy. He's going to have a very well produced. It's going to be short enough, like 30 seconds, but it's going to be like, drink my water, dip my face, eat a banana, see my therapist, go to the gym. I'm for it.
No, well, I mean, these big influencers, right? The big, all the super hyper health influencer, whatever there was that, but for mental health. Mental health influencers, like a guy that everybody looked on the internet and goes, wow, look at that guy. That guy sure looks happy.
Oh, you mean Jordan B. Peterson doesn't look happy to you? He doesn't look like a happy guy. No, I'm a really big fan of the healthygamer.gg guy. Now he's a psychiatrist, but man, I think he's done a lot of positive good for mental health spaces, at least among the gaming population. I know there's probably a few of you viewers on Twitch right now. You probably know who I'm talking about with Dr. K. But anyway, he's got a big smile. He is very relatable. He's married and has children, which I think is really good a really good role model for gamers who maybe spend a lot of time not getting married and not having children. So I think there's room for it. There's definitely space for an upbeat, positive role model psychotherapy type who's
I'm not
yelling at
saying
you to
that
clean
there
your
is.
room.
I'm not saying that there isn't, but I think
We're overdue.
proportionally, I think we're overdue. Proportionally, there's a lot more of physical wellness and not enough influencers or people with big platforms talking about mental health, at least not to that extent.
Not for the actual like scientific like brain, mind, and behavior. There are a lot for like the really spiritual, like do peyote, and I think there's that a lot of white women with dreads who
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. No, there's plenty of them, but they're not talking about mental health in the form of like, actually be introspective and change and transform. It's more about, being into the
it's all about
vibes.
it's all about mindfulness, right? They're promoting mindfulness and acceptance and the energies and the auras and all these words that are out there, but it's not science driven. It's not factual. It's all vibes. We're all selling vibes.
Yeah, I was about to say mindfulness is actually one of the more researched, like neuroscience and biofeedback, especially. Like people will there's lots of studies where they hook them up to all the bells and whistles, and they'll do meditation exercises, and you can see real immediate feedback in the brain, how it changes. So yeah, no, mindfulness is one of the most scientifically supported things. So if some of those woo-woo, patchouli smelling folk push it, great, all for it. You can't mindfulness your way out of relationship issues. You can't, mindfulness doesn't change history any more than pills do. Can change your relationship with history. Now, I'm pro mindfulness, but maybe not pro super spiritualism. Fly down to South America and do ayahuasca for 3 days. Maybe not.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left on the clock. I want to open it up for questions on anybody that is listening on X, on Twitch, or on YouTube. If you have any questions that pertaining to this topic or anything else really for that matter, we would love to hear from you. Remember, we are streaming and broadcasting live on X, on Twitch, and on YouTube.
This show is made or broken by your participation. The more you comment, the more we can shape it to be the kind of show you want to watch.
That's right. Well, and also if you see this and on the recorded version, which will be posted on YouTube, and on on all of the platforms, then feel free to drop a comment in the a note in the comments, your questions that you couldn't ask us live, and we can probably go back on those and read them on the.
We lurk. We lurk on the comments. Trust me. We'll write down good questions if you send them to us.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, on the topic of why therapy, this has been very enlightening. Do you have any other notes that you wanna? I mean, I have a couple other questions of my own, but if you have anything else that you think that we haven't touched on.
I have at least 8 more shows worth of stuff we haven't touched on. So
well, yeah.
Why don't what do you have for me?
Well, I mean, let's see. Just going through. This is me coming off from a layman standpoint, right? I mean, which I think it's part of the charm of this show is that I feel like you're explaining things to me, and this is everybody seeing me get into therapy live.
Or at least advice.
At least advice. Maybe not therapy. Yeah. just kind of like thinking of things that people might ask right out of the bat. Like, for example, is it a right amount of time to stay in therapy once you decide to go?
Ooh. Yeah, I don't think that there is such a right amount. In fact, I'm actually at the point in my career where I'd say be cautious of a therapist who's going to tell you exactly how long your course of therapy is going to take, because they can't scry into crystal balls any more than you can. Um, I think most hospitals and most clinics that try to stick to insurance standards, it's really popular to stick to 12 weeks. I don't know who sat down and decided it, but probably Aaron Beck and his crew. But it was 12 weeks, and maybe you can end 4 weeks sooner. Maybe you can extend it an additional 4 weeks. But for some reason, 12 weeks seems to be the magic number. And people say 12 weeks, 3 months, sessions 1 through 12, et cetera, et cetera. That is a big red flag for me. If somebody says it's going to take 12 weeks, they probably have already planned out all 12 of those weeks before they've even heard me open my mouth. I'm already going to go in skeptical. It's also not someone saying, "Oh yeah, no, this issue's you have a very severe personality disorder, and you're going to be in therapy for 25 years." Maybe. I don't want to be in therapy for 25 years. I've taken this line. One of my followers on X gave it to me, but he said, if you want your therapy to be short, it will be. And I really like that sentiment, because boy, it's true. But in my personal experience, or at least in my approach, I personally see therapy occurring between 6 months and 3 years.
Okay.
Now, 6 months is usually a good amount of time to address things at a surface to medium level. 3 months is just a handshake. 6 months is maybe a more complete episode of care. And anywhere between 6 months and 3 years, that's a big range, could be what somebody needs to really make that extra step. I don't This is where I have to really defer to my senior colleagues here. I'm not somebody who's practiced for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I'm not even 50 years old. So there are some clinicians who could say this is the benefit of therapy over 5 years, or this is what you can get out of a patient after 10 years. I can't. I do not have the repertoire to speak on what psychotherapy looks like at that level. Most of my clients, we usually agree to complete our episode of care, either to graduate or to end it by about 3 years. Now, I have about 1 or 2 patients where they are very gung-ho about, I want to just see what else I can get out of this. I want to really push this. I want to keep going until we really can't go any further. And we do. And we have not hit that wall yet. So maybe they're the ones that are going to show me what can be done after 10 years. But I really have to defer to my senior colleagues on that one.
Interesting. And on that topic of extended periods of time, have you ever heard or anyone expressed of fear that they might become dependent on therapy? Is that something that it's does that occur?
Well, I've heard the fear. I don't know the actual frequency that it occurs. I can see how it might happen. And I don't know how much pressure we should put on the therapist for not saying, go and get out. I wish I had more direct experience to be able to speak on it. I understand the fear, but I also see at least in classic analysis, there are some people who are dedicated to just developing. When do we finish developing? One of the benefits that I've seen working with patients over a period of years is that accidents happen, people die, people have children, people move. Everything in life can happen at any point in time, and those are usually avenues or doors that open up new therapeutic possibilities. So if you're in therapy for 30 years and after 30 years a parent dies, or you have maybe you lose a leg, There's more to work on in an analysis or in a therapy. So it's really hard to say that it's dependency. I don't know. I feel like there could be arguments
So,
made.
so people that express that fear of dependency, what are they afraid of? That they're not going to be able to do without it, or what is it?
Oh, that they become dependent on the therapist, that they don't have other relationships. They don't have
Mm.
friends, they're not dating, they're just holed up in their room until their appointment, which I mean, I haven't seen it. I can't say that it doesn't happen. I do think it's a real fear. Woody Allen. Woody Allen has been he's been in analysis for probably longer than I've been alive. I watched an interview of him when he was about 30 years in. And the interviewer was saying, like, don't you think you've had enough? Like, have you learned anything yet? And he's a comedian, so his response is, yeah, I don't know, I'm going to give him one more year. And I I appreciate that, but I imagine they're getting something out of it at that level. I just don't have that perspective from either side of the chair to be able to speak of it definitively. I actually would invite people who are curious about this, reach out to a senior therapist, maybe a clinician with a few more gray hairs than I do, who's been around the block or two, and genuinely ask them, what is the benefit of being in a therapy or in an analysis for 10, 20, or 30 years? I would just be speculating. I would be repeating what I've read in books or in journal articles. They'd be able to speak from experience. I think they're the ones who you want to hear from, if for those in the audience who might want to know.
So, how do you measure if therapy is working, right? At the different stages that you just mentioned.
Well, if you were a cognitive behavioral therapist, everything is broken down based off of your diagnosis and your symptoms, and you can get a score, and you go from a score of, say, 40 to a score of, say, 25. Hey, I've reduced my score by 15. I must be doing better. As if self-report tests are the most accurate thing in the world. I personally look for signs of vitality. I hear it from the patient. The patient will say, I'm fighting less with my spouse, or I'm getting out of the house more, or I find myself, more calm at work when there's stressors showing up. It's very personal what people are working on. So the mechanisms to measure growth or progress towards goals is also going to be very personal. So if it really is going to depend on what that person is coming to for therapy. If they want to have a better marriage, well, the evidence that the therapy is working is that they're communicating better. They're having they're going on more dates, or they're overall rating their marriage more satisfactorily. If they want to overcome PTSD, evidence of growth is that they are able to stay in public places, or their startle reflex is more manageable. But it's going to be reported qualitatively. They're going to give a very subjective response of, someone cut me off in traffic and I didn't go into the back seat and get my crossbow. I actually just let him go. I would consider that evidence of growth. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's, long story short, it's very personal, very, very, very bespoke.
Yeah. But they are clear signs that you can identify. And then do these signs are identified first, would you say, by the patient or by the therapist?
I would say most of the time. Now, there are times I see evidence of growth. That's less important than them seeing it. That's less important than them noticing it. And there are times where I see it and they don't. And how much am I going to convince them? I think about really early on in my training. Gosh, this was maybe one of my first practicum jobs, and I had supervisors. I don't even think I had my master's degree yet. In a course of therapy, I helped a gentleman. He got a girlfriend. He got a lease, and he moved out. He got an apartment. He got a car, and he got a job. And when we ended our therapy, I asked him, what he noticed had changed, and he said nothing. So I could probably say that there were a couple positive changes from the therapy, but he didn't. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, there wasn't any. And maybe it wasn't as successful a therapy as I thought it was.
So how do you as a therapist help your patients integrate your insights into daily life?
Ooh, I got to think about that one. How do I put that into words? I have techniques, I have strategies, I have approaches. Honestly, I try to talk with them about it. In fact, if they're doing really well and occasionally we're going to be wrapping up a session, I'll make space to consolidate the gains. Like, let's talk about all of the things that you've been noticing. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. But they have to say it. They have to be able to say, I'm noticing, I'm recognizing, I see. Because me telling them,
So it's not like you lay out action items.
I mean, very rarely. It can happen. It's not really my approach.
All right, here's your homework. This week you're gonna go and try this out there.
That's about as far homework as I get. I certainly am not going to be grading any homework, so I don't want to give anybody worksheets. So I encourage people to think about or observe. So yeah, that's about as far as I'm going to be doing it. But that might be how I would encourage them to consolidate the data. I'll say, all right, over the next week, just notice how many times you smile instead of yell at someone, right? And then they'll say it's so much more than I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
I made that up. I don't think
no, but I get the idea. I get the idea. It's not like you're not gonna give them 5 bullet points to work on a checklist, right? It's more like, hey, try this, be mindful of that, and see what you notice.
Notice it, put words to it, and then when we meet again, we'll have more data and we'll use that to update our hypothesis, and we're going to test new hypotheses. It's essentially it is a science. It requires us to apply the scientific method. Well, I actually think that's our time today. This actually flew by. I can't believe it's already that time. Well, Pablo, how about you take us home?
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank everybody for spending time with us. This has been great. Remember that we are broadcasting live every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, live on X, live on Twitch, and on YouTube. Throw your comments down below. If you're watching this on the recorded version, definitely drop a like. Let us know what you think. We would love to keep improving this show as we go along. Thank you, Dr. Perrin, for all of the great insights.
And thank you, Pablo. I just want to double check or verify the time. It's 7 Eastern, 6 Central. I think you said 5 Central.
Correct. That's correct. Okay. Yeah, 6 Central, 7 Eastern. That's right. Yes, that's correct.
Pablo, as always, couldn't do this without you. I appreciate you. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming here to talk about psychology and psychotherapy.